members of the clergy, if there are any among us, omama bomthandazo nomqokozo, usapho lwakaQunta, distinguished guests, compatriots, umlisela nomthinjana weli osekelwe lenyanga, ababhali kwiindawo ngeendawo abakuzo, to all the writers, the creatives, near and far, izihlobo nezalamane, friends, near and far, those who have been able to be here physically, and those who are joining us virtually. I have the distinct honor of being your program director and master of ceremonies. Igama lami nguSipho Kuhle Kamathe uNcabi. For diversity reasons, I will employ my bilingualism so as to accommodate as many as possible. Abantu abadala bayakuthi le meko isehleleyo isike bayakuthi imela igobele esandleni. Others will say, death, be not proud. And others will ask, death, where be thy sting? Kufa, luphi na ulwamvila lwakho? Ngenxa yamaxesha, njengokuba benditshilo, because of time, as I have said, ixesha liza kuxhatshwa yinja ekuhambeni kwexesha. Time will drool at the sides of the mouth of a dog. That's the literal translation. Kodwa ke kuye kuthiwe isiXhosa asitolikwa. isiXhosa is not a language to be translated. But for conviviality's sake, we do that. Now, there are some changes to the program. For example, the obituary will be read after the prayer which follows the reading of Isaiah 55. So that is the change I will communicate at this juncture. Ndizacela ke ukuba sibe nentsebenziswano. Could you please all put your phones on silent, if possible, and if not silent, on airplane mode, and if not that, do not disturb mode, or if all of this is a bit tricky, please switch your cell phones off. Ukuqala ke ndizacela siphakamise umfundisi umluleki Mxothwa aze kusifundela Isaiah 55 from verse 8 ukubheka pha aze asivulele ngomthandazo. Ndishiye indawo. Thixo Nkosi ngenyaniso zonke zizwe mazizuze
Usindi amadolo kweli lizwe maka kobe phambi kwakho zithe zonke lwimizelu xelo dumo lwakho. Amen. Mandinibulise nonke kusasa nje ngelihle igama lomfeli nomvukeli wethu Yesu Kristu. Hayi bethuna bamqhathile abantu abathe kusira ndingumfundisi. I am certainly not a pastor, but yeah, that honor feels good, Butemba. Into yobana ndiyinikwe ekuseni nje. Without wasting your time, Butsipo, let us all read from the book of Isaiah. I will only read verse 8 and verse 9. Isaiah chapter 55, I'm reading verse 8 and verse 9. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, says Jehovah. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. May the good Lord add a blessing to the reading of his word, now and forever. Amen. Masithandazeni ke kusasa nje. Thixo wethu, mdali wezulu nomhlaba nemithombo yamanzi ekuseni nje, sisondela kuwe bhelundini lesabatha. Sisithi okunene ubungcwalisa abo bakho, amandla ngawakho, ufanelwe ukudunyiswa, ufanelwe yindili. Thixo ndino nemfobe, Thixo ndino nemfesane. Thixo maluso olungileyo ovusa ama-athalala afana nathi, uwamise Thixo wethu kumhlaba bekumele bakume wena gaqa, ukwenzela into yoba ilizwi lakho, umoya wakho ingcwele uzoba yintuthuzelo kolu sapho lwethu. Siyakubulela ke Thixo wethu ngendlela eyodwa, in a very special way. We are indeed thankful that as a family we may have friends, colleagues, those that have taken time to be with us, so that this grief may be shared amongst us. Bless each and everyone that has gathered here, those who are watching at home, who cannot be with us, yet we feel their love and their hearts are also with us. Bless each one of us and this service in the mighty name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen. I will ask that we remain. I know we are used to standing when an obituary is read. I say let's remain seated simply for the main reason that it is important that we honor people when they live, when they are still living, when they have a breath of life in them, and not to wait when they lie in such a coffin and then we want to honor them. And so it becomes very, very important, because I've seen people who stand here when an obituary is read, and yet they never even greeted that individual when they were living. And so I want to encourage all of us to sit and just listen for a minute where Umambongo comes from. And so I read. And this apelating when these are born. Yolisa Qunta was the eldest daughter of Yolisa and Christine Qunta. Named after one of the greatest female leaders and freedom fighters of Zimbabwe, Mbuya Nehanda. She was born on the 16th of November, 1979 in Sydney, Australia. When she was 18 months old, she was sent home to live with her paternal grandparents, Grace, Notata Vincent Qunta, apha Langa. She was then reunited with her parents when she was 4 years old, after they returned to Botswana on completion of their studies. She attended Eastleigh Primary School in Harare, Zimbabwe. Uyoli then attended high school at St. George's Grammar School here in Cape Town. She then completed 2.5 years of a BTech degree in chemical engineering at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology and 1 year of an economics degree at UCT. She was due to continue her studies at UNISA shortly before her hospitalization. In 2016, Uyoli published a book which she edited and contributed to, titled Writing What? A collection of essays by young Black people about their experiences in post-94 South Africa. The book was critically acclaimed and as a bestseller. Uyoli had a sense of duty to others who were less fortunate and always reached out and gave of her time. She was passionate about fighting for racial and gender justice and was a dedicated feminist. A few examples of her charity work are her collection of books for Langa High School, where her late grandfather was the principal for many years. She also participated in the work of the South African Riding for the Disabled Association, USARDA, which is situated in Constantia. This charity assists disabled children through structured horse riding for rehabilitation purposes. Uyoli also regularly mentored young people in both structured programs and informal ways. She passed away as a result of complications from heart failure at the age of 41 at Grooteskier Hospital here in Cape Town. Her beloved father, having passed on in 2014, Yolisa is survived by her mother, her sister Nzinga, and niece Amari, and the extended family. I call extended, as you would know, Apagut. And also, she had a big family of friends. She was a vivacious spark in her family and friends' life, and will sadly be missed. Lala ngoxolo ke mambongo Mbuyisa Khoza ngalela mvemnyama sondisa mathobela sawhlala sikhumbula enkosi.
Kwesihlandlo mandicele ukuba niphakamise, andazi nokuba usengupastor okanye ungupastor, umnumzana Xola Sikhosana.
Ndiyabona uba ndibafaka engxakini abantu kule nto yokungacaci kakuhle uba ubufundisi ke ndibufundele. Ndandisithi kudala ke ndingumfundisi obiziweyo nofundileyo. So oba ke ikuvisa kamandi into yoba uthi mfundisi, ungandibiza mfundisi. Andizijikisanga incwadi zam zobufundisi. Ndisatshatisa, ndisangcwaba, ndiyakwazi nokutolika iBhayibhile. Molweni ke ndlu emnyama. Ngo-2016 bendinewonga ke lokuba lapha sifihla utata kaYoli. Just a little bit of background ngoba abantu buza beziphendula. Kwakukho ilizwe laphumayo ke ngoko elasithi uthe uba uQunta makungabikho mfundisi ozawuthetha phezu kwentloko yakhe. Ndanyengezwa ke kuloo nkqubo yayiqhutywa ndaba namagama ambalwa ke ndiwabhekisayo apha. Ndifumene ke umnxeba apha ekhaya kwathiwa siyakwazi into yoba awusenguye umfundisi kodwa ke usapho lukaYoli luthandile into yoba ube nawo amazwi owabhekisayo. So ndiyabona ke into yoba laa nto ndayithethayo ngo-2016 yamkeleka apha kolu sapho lakwaQunta. Mandiwenza abe mafutshane torhwana ngolu hlobo. Andazi noba ke bakhona kuthi abakhumbulayo into yokokuba umzi nomzi kudala wawuba ne-album, photo album eyayifihlwa ikhutshwe ngamaxesha athile. Phaa ekhaya ke yayigujululwa phantsi kwendawo ecinezelweyo zii-suitcase neempahla. Kodwa ke xa seyikhutshiwe sawuhlala phambi kwalo album ke sibuke ubabone umakazi phaya besebatsha, oodabawo besebatsha. Ubone utatakho phaya nomamakho besebatsha kakhulu. Ngeli xesha kaloku ukhula badala. Kodwa ke ngoku xa ubabona kulaa album uyothuka into yoba bakhe abantu babahle ngolu hlobo. Mhlawumbi yayingumtshato nawe uzibone phaya mhlawumbi unxityisiwe loo sutu. Iba ngumzuzwana nje kodwa umzuzu okufudumeza intliziyo yakho. Ubone uba hayi kodwa noko sisuka kude sileli khaya. I-photo album ke yayiba yinto yokugcina imbali yalapha ekhaya. Bacacise ke abantu babekhona ke ngubani lo, ngubani ke lo, ngubani ke lo. Uvuba mhlawumbi noba kusekho mandi ngeli xesha apha ekhaya kodwa ngalaa mzuzwana uba ujonge laa photo album uziva ungumntu phakathi kwabantu. Uzingce ngoba uzalwa ngaba bantu futhi ubone into yoba noko ndiphuma phakathi kwabantu. Andazi ke noba zisekhona ezo photo albums kula makhaya ke. It's a digitized world. Yonke into ayikuGoogle ubone uba kwawu akusekho storytelling esenzekayo. Le nto ke yale photo album ndibalisa ngoba ndicinga into yokokuba silusapho olumnyama, black family. Kungakumbi kule nyanga yolutsha kufana ngathi sivule i-album yefamily. Ngelishwa ke asiboni zinto zifudumeza inhliziyo zethu. Kule nyanga kaJune kuthiwa inyanga yolutsha singathi sibukele i-horror movie xa sijonge imbali yethu silusapho olumnyama. Every page inento elisikizi. Ndinomfanekiso ke engqondweni womntwana obukele i-photo album, family photo album. Every page ubona umuntu oxhonywe emthini okanye igazi elichithekileyo. Ucinga uba lo mntwana angakhula abe yintoni xa ezawuthi every page ayivulayo kule album ubona isikizi. Ndiya kwindawo ke ethi uYoli ubomi bakhe ubomi bomzamo wokutshintsha le family photo album. Into kokuba kwixesha elizayo abantwana bakhule xa bebukela imbali yabantu abamnyama abe neqhayiya ngayo. Imizamo sivileyo apha kaYoli yoku banegalelo ekuphuculeni impilo nobomi bomntu omnyama. Ndicinga into yokokuba isishiya sinoxanduva sonke lokokuba le horror movie esihleli kuyo esiyo noko mayibe khona indlela yokuba itshintshe. Our minds are assaulted daily by this horror picture of black existence. Bantwana bakhula beyiqhelile into ebuhlungu. Ngoku ndidriver ndisiza apha kukhona ipicture apha entloko yala savana ebekwa entloko. Ungandibuzi uba ndiyibona phi. Ndicinga uba ikhona into ethethayo laa nto. Ndicinga uba ingqondo yabantu abatsha ishushu kakhulu, inoxinezelelo olungummangaliso. Ifuna uba kubekho into izayipholisa. Kudala kwaselwa, zange ndayibona into utywala buthwalwe entloko bube liqhayiya ngohlobo kwenziwa ngalo. Torhwana xa ndizawuhlala phantsi mandithi ke sibeka uYoli ngexesha elinzima kakhulu. Ngexesha elinzima kakhulu ifunise ke ngokuloo nto into yoba sithathe ixesha ke sicinge nzulu ngobomi bethu singabantu abamnyama negalelo lethu esilenzayo omnye komnye. Umzekelo omhlekelo asishiya kunye naye uYoli. Mandiyibulele ke imbeko engaka yokuba nam ndikwazi ukuba nawo amagama endiwaphosayo. Ndiyabulela ba.
Enkosi kakhulu kumfundisi uSikhosana. Inene uyandlale kakuhle imeko esiphila kuyo nesimo senhlalo. Ngeli thuba ke sizawungena kwizithethi. Isithethi sokuqala siza kuboniswa umfanekiso bhanyabhanya. The first speech will come from video or multimedia, which will be able to view on screen. And this first speaker was the publisher at NB Publishers when writing What We Like, the collection of essays and book that Yolisa edited and contributed towards, was being crafted. And so without any further ado, I would like us to listen to Annie Olivier, of whom Yoli adored immensely.
Dear family and friends of Yolisa, my name is Annie Olivier and I published Writing What We Like, A New Generation Speaks, a unique anthology that was compiled by Yolisa Qunta and that was published in 2016. When Yolisa first approached Tafelberg Publishers with a book concept, I was immediately intrigued by this vivacious and highly intelligent young woman. As I got to know her better over numerous long lunches, I was completely charmed by her energy, her warm personality, her outspokenness, and her fantastic sense of humor. I was reminded again of her wonderful sense of humor when I discovered her author biography of 2016 online. It reads as follows. Yolisa began writing after discovering that her childhood passion, being a flying doctor, did not really combine aviation and medicine. She is also an avid reader, overzealous Unophile, and half-marathon runner. A wanderluster at heart, she plans to have her passport filled with stamps as she refines her plans for world domination. When we started working on the book, Yolisa also sent me some of her writing to give me an idea of the kinds of topics she felt could be covered in the anthology. Ever since then, I've been a huge fan of her writing. Of course, she writes beautifully and with so much humor, but more importantly, with great insight into the human condition. She brought together an amazing group of writers for the anthology, including the likes of Shaka Sisulu, Simpiwe Dana, David Kao, Loyiso Gola, and Sipho Kushle Mate, who is also a friend. In the introduction to the book, Yolisa wrote as follows. I wanted to record our thoughts as the first generation to experience what it is like to live in a society that is situated, sometimes precariously, between a difficult past and a freer, though challenging present. I think future generations would like to know how we cope with freedom and the legacies of the past, racism and poverty. I waited for many years for someone to write about these things. When no one did, I knew I had to heed Toni Morrison's advice. If there's a book that you want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it. This quote really captures Yolisa's spirit. If she wanted something badly enough, she would simply go out and get it. It's quite a daunting task to compile an anthology, especially if it's your first book, as you have to brief and chase up contributors and ensure that everything comes together in the end. It's not for the faint-hearted, but Yolisa excelled at it. In her review of the book on Litnet, Karina Zurek wrote, "If there ever was a timely book, Writing What We Like is definitely it. The volume represents fascinating and incisive slices of contemporary life in South Africa. I would welcome a collection of this kind every year or two." This important book, that I believe was ahead of its time, will always be part of Yolisa's incredible legacy. It is a physical manifestation of her creative spirit, her love for her country, and a commitment to tell it like it is. Yolisa and I stayed in touch after the book was published. She used to regale me with stories of her exotic travels and fabulous lunches on wine farms, or she would send me her latest piece of writing. When my WhatsApp notifications would start pinging endlessly, I knew there was a new dispatch from the world of Yolisa. My life will most definitely be poorer and much more mundane without it. Yolisa, thank you for the many, many ways in which you have enriched my life. I will miss you terribly.
And that, good people, was Annie Olivier, who has since gone on to work at Jonathan Ball. And Yoli and her continue to flirt around the idea of her writing another book. And it is unfortunate that that book never came. However, the book of How Much She Loved Us is here. And so without any more delay, I would like to call upon Miss Fatima Dike to come and speak as a family friend of Yolisa, a secondary mother of Yolisa, the mother of Yoli's best friend, Shani Dike. And you may know her as one of our treasured gems, and playwright.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to come here and talk about the friendship between the Qunta family and the Dike family. It's not easy because I'm a mother, and this is a great loss. But at the same time, it's life. Life has a beginning, life has an end. When I was thinking about the friendship between our two families, I found that every generation we had friends in the Qunta family. Yolisa was my friend. And of course, what brought us even closer was that we lived in that period of the struggle when I started writing plays. And of course, I started writing poetry before I wrote plays. And we had something in common because we felt the same way about the liberation of Black people in South Africa. But our friendship went beyond that. And then there was the friendship between Sis Nomahlubi, my elder sister, no Sis Lindy, which lasted until Sis Lindy also died and left. Then there was the friendship between my younger brother, Usmiki, with, what was his name now? Forgot. Sorry? Happy, yes, thank you, sorry. Speaking of happy. And then, of course, this, I wouldn't even call it a friendship. I think it was a love affair between Ushani and Yolisa. And Yolisa would always tell me Ushani is the love of her life. Shani will also tell me that Yolisa is the love of her life. And then I'm standing there, I'm a bit confused. Are they gay? No, but they've got boyfriends. Okay, step back, Mom. But the relationship between these two ladies was incredible. I mean, Yolisa went to live with Shani in Miami for 2 years. And she had the opportunity to be a second mother to Shani's kids. Uyoli, in my opinion, when I think about Yolisa Qunta very deeply, reminded me a lot of her father, Utatak Uyisa. She had a lot of Uyisa's mannerisms. Yes, she died at an early age, but Yoli lived a full life. She may have lived 41 years on this earth, but Yoli lived a full life. And when you think about Yoli, the word vibrancy comes into your mind. So my connection with her really was that I was the walking library for her. Mamom Dala, you know, she'll call me up. Fat, what is the meaning of? These are things that have to do with the Xhosa language or Xhosa customs. And I have to explain them to her because I know when she sends me WhatsApp messages asking me about particular things, I know she's doing a job and she needs that information. So I was her living, walking library kwizinto zesintu zesiXhosa. As I'm standing here right now, Christine, you are mourning your child. I am carrying the burden of a daughter who is many, many, many miles away from me, whose heart is broken because she has lost the love of her life. How do you mend that? How do I mend Christine's heart? But as mothers, we know that this pain right now that we're feeling will go, because in our Xhosa language, sithi akukho nto ingapheliyo. And this pain, when it leaves, it will be replaced by these beautiful memories of this amazing, amazing child that we all shared as mothers, who was our child. Yoli, I'm very disappointed that you left the way you did, because you remember you promised me that you're going to get a husband who was a millionaire. Now I am missing out on those cows that I was going to charge that man, because we had already decided that I was going to be your spokesperson. Oh, well, then it means I'm going to die poor. Thank you very much.
Sibulele kakhulu umama uDike osizobele umfanekiso omhle kaYolisa. So what is interesting from that, and it reminded me that there is a scholar, a young black woman, who writes on the sociology of umakhulu. And the idea is that old black women in our societies are repositories of knowledge. It shouldn't be that we still talk about fathers of fields. But because of our colonial encounter, we have forgotten that old black women are repositories of knowledge, or encyclopedias, as she says. And also, historically, there was no such thing as igqirha or isangoma esingumuntu ongutata. Women have always been spiritual advisors to men, even in times of war. And I thought I should just highlight that at this juncture, as I am reminded of the shoulders that we tower on in this society. And so, for continuity's sake, I think it is now important that I invoke, or I call upon the video pre-recorded by Shani Dike, who I affectionately call Unomshanana, to talk about Yolisa the friend, Yolisa the secondary mother to her children, etc. So if we could please play that.
Phenomenal Yoli. Many people wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion model size. When I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say, it's in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. I'm a woman, phenomenally Yoli. I walk into a room just as cool as you please, and to a man, the fellow stands or falls down on their knees. Then they swarm around me, a hive of bees. I say, it's the fire in my eyes, the flash of my teeth, the swing in my waist, the joy in my feet. I'm a woman, phenomenally Yoli. Men themselves have wondered what they see in me. They tried so much, but they can't touch my inner misery. When I try to show them, they say they still can't see. I say, it's in the arch of my back, the sun of my smile, the ride of my breasts, the grace of my style. I'm a woman, phenomenally Yoli. Now you see, you understand just why my head's not bowed. I don't shout or jump about or have to talk real loud. When you see me passing, it ought to make you proud. I say, it's in the click of my heels, the bend of my hair, the palms of my hands, the need for my care, because I'm a woman, phenomenally Yoli. That's my mother, and all your mothers, and my grandmothers, and your grandmothers, and my great-grandmothers, and your great and my great, great and yours, and all you women, and me. Rest in peace, my beloved, my friend, my Jonah. Rest in peace, Yolisa.
Good morning. I'd like to say something about my friend Yolisa. When the English say the good die young, they are referring to Yolisa Qunta, an enigmatic force of nature, born of two parents who were freedom fighters and were passionate about our rights. Yolisa has sucked her emphatic need to stand up for human rights from them. Moreover, a lover of life. In Xhosa we say, ufuzo liyagqithisa, okanye igqabi aliwi kude emthini, meaning the apple does not fall far from the tree. She is a cut and paste copy of her father, down to the glasses on her nose, her crossed legs, and always a book in hand. She has a special ability to always make you feel relevant, constantly uplifting and unconditionally loving. She's never on time for anything, but she's always reliable. A woman of her word and a confidant. I know you think this is sudden, but this is Yolisa. Outlandish, audacious. Usishiya sibambe izidlele, sikhamisile. Her fashion sense is a reflection of her life, not to mention her laugh, isiqazo sensini. Her affinity for the English language and being a founding member of the grammar police is annoying. My love for Yolisa is immeasurable. I feel like an elephant is standing on my chest right now. But as Yoli would say, we move. She's a fountain of knowledge, some of it wasted on me, but the last lesson she is teaching me is to appreciate people in life, live life to its fullest, and be bold. Mayoyi, as my kids refer to her, with the patience of a saint towards little people. Children gravitated towards her calm nature, always buying the kids candies or chocolate to bribe them with. I'm sure she's being Mami Yoyi right now. Yolisa came to America to help me in the first 2 years of my children's lives. I needed another pair of hands and things were really hectic. I couldn't afford to pay someone. And she was right here for me to help me get settled into the new life of being a mother. I will forever hold that near and dear to my heart because that was just a testament of who Yolisa is. Yolisa is dependable. She's always there for anybody who needs her to be. And she always does that with a smile on her face. Lala ngoxolo sihlobo sam. I love you till we meet again.
I'd like to make a quick correction. The first woman you saw was Dr. Rebecca Shuya, who is a Namibian doctor. And Julie and her quite enjoyed going to the butchery here in Langa. Yoli wanted to make sure that everyone had the best, not of both worlds, but of all worlds. And Shani is correct in saying that the untimely passing of her is very her. there could be no other way of deciding to transcend. I think we should have the tributes by the kids on the aunt that she was, Umakazi. Shani just shared that although a friend, she played the role of Utabao to her children. And that was the power of Yoli, to make sure that everyone felt seen, loved, acknowledged, and her commitment to children came so naturally, even in her charity work. And so we may now play the children's video.
Bye bye, Makazi. I love you. And I like you because you give me marshmallows and you take me to my other cousins and you buy me lots of stuff and I love you. Bye.
Good morning, everyone. As some of you know, Kamalang Mangalisa. I just want to say a few words. The first one is rest in peace, Aunt Yoli. You always were very thoughtful and very kind. Whenever you came over, you always brought us things and marshmallows, as Amari said, and the things that we did every time when you came over, we cooked with you, if you could still remember, and we did, and you told us stories about you and wherever you've been all over the world, and how your sword fighting is doing, and your skateboarding. You actually quite missed out on a lot, and we all mourn the loss of Aunt Yoli. Rest in peace, Aunt Yoli. Bye.
Akukho sizwe esingathwelwanga ngabantu abadala. Ngakho oko, for this reason, I'd like to call upon Mr. Themba Noluchungu to come and speak on behalf of the elders.
Allow me to kick off with a song by Paul Robeson, who was born into slavery in the US. And against tremendous odds, he became what Frederick Douglass, who had been a slave also before him, had called a self-made man. Paul Robeson was endowed with many, many beautiful things, but the one thing that stands out above everything else in terms of his virtues was that he had a beautiful baritone voice. And he sang mostly what was known as Negro spirituals at the time, and he would be asked by countries like Russia to go and sing because he had this unique baritone voice. Now, what I'm going to do is to try to sing But before I do that, I want to confess that I am not endowed in terms of having a beautiful voice. My brother was. What I managed to do is to not sing out of tune. That's all I can manage. So bear with me. This song very briefly says, there's a man going around taking names. He hath taken my father's name and left me in such pain. And death is the man going around taking names. There's a man going round taking names. There's a man going round taking names. He hath taken our Yoli's name and has left our hearts in pain. There's a man going round taking names. Death is the man taking names. Oh, death is the man taking names. He hath taken our Yoli's name and has left our hearts in pain. There's a man going round taking names. When I spent some time with my sister, Christine, and she explained what had happened during the last days of Yoli, one thing that she said throughout was that she was very bold, and she would smile, and she would crack a joke, and even when the doctor said to her, all your lungs or your organs are collapsing, very insensitive. There has to be a euphemistic way of putting across a message like that. But you do not say to somebody who is ill that your organs are collapsing. You do not do that. I was quite angry. But in the midst of it all, Christian said she just smiled. She just smiled and she conveyed that message that what the doctor had said to her was, well, these are doctors. And then these words came to mind when I thought of humor in the midst of all this. And this is from Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. Or rather, let me just use some other poetic words other than that, so as to drive home as to what kind of person my niece was. This is a poem known as Invictus, Unconquered. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate or how charged the punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. So those words capture the spiritual strength of somebody of Yoli's caliber. She was a wonderful kid. I've seen her in cases where, some instances where she was interacting with people and also her cousins. And she talks straight. She engages in a direct manner, That's the kind of person that one wants to associate with, because that's the person who will say, you are wrong. You do not do this. You have to apologize. She was that kind of person. It is very, very, very sad that we've lost such a wonderful child. But the point is, I want to say this, Christine, my sister, this is a cross that you're going to bear for the rest of your life. It will get better, but it will not go away. I promise you. I lost my sister a couple of years ago. I still feel the pain at times. You know how I cope with it? I always pray, or at times I pray, and I say, God, please let not this tragedy affect my health. There's so much that I need to do to achieve. Please take care of me. So, my sister, when you feel that pain and you thinking about your child, think about God being there. I know that Yolisa at some stage was not really quite sure about God, the existence of God. And that was not because he embraced satanic ways or anything, because some people tend to see things in binary terms. It was because he looked around the world and saw all this suffering and felt, how could this be allowed to occur when God was omnipotent? That was Yolisa. And later on, he answered the call of God, believed in God. Now, I don't want to leave you. So much has been said about Yoli. I could say a lot. I want to send a message to her siblings. Her siblings embrace her cousins as well. But let us bear in mind that Mandela had said that in Xhosa, there isn't a word that translates from cousin. There isn't. It's brothers, it is sisters, it is my uncle's children, it is umntana katato mncinci, utato mncinci wam. That's how it is. That is Xhosa culture. And so the message to all of you, meaning her siblings, embracing her cousins as well, be strong. Always be together. There will always be some tensions and differences and so on, but take everything in your stride and know that you exist for your relatives, for the community, for the neighborhood, and hold your head up high. Now, lest I leave you on a sad note, I will once more sing a song. Bear with me again. One last time, and then I will step down. I certainly will step down. This is a song again by Paul Robeson. I'm going home to see. I feel so sad about this song. That's why it's like there's a lump in my throat. Maybe I should not sing it. Maybe I should not. But let me just say a few words once more before I step down. We'd like to thank all of you who've come out to pay your last respects to Yoli, especially given the fact that this grim reaper that we know as COVID is wreaking havoc, causing pain, tragedy, deaths in its wake. And yet you've gone out of your way to be here to pay your last respects. that we treasure very, very, very much. Thank you very much. The program director. I'm used to MC, Minister, to MC, and not project director. But anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your being available.
Thank you very much, Mr. Noluchungu, for speaking on behalf of the elders. I'm not sure if the second song perhaps was I'm Going Home to Die No More. At this point, I'd like to invite Yolisa Qunta to the podium.
Good afternoon, morning. Making sense of my sister's sudden diagnosis of heart failure and the sudden complications that led to her death is not easy. There is a huge sense of loss and deep, deep sadness that she's gone from this earth. It's very confusing and very sad. And in moments where I struggle with things, I always try and look for things to be grateful for. So I'm grateful that Yoli was my first friend, that she and I shared 3 decades on this earth, that we adventured when we were small kids in a village in Khabane and not so small on the streets of Cape Town, in particular Long Street, that she protected me from bullies when I was in primary school, that she helped me learn how to drive, that she was someone I was able to grow with even when that growth did not come easily or at the expense of our relationship. I will remember my sister, as many in my family will. She was a bright light. She was vivacious, bubbly, funny, beautiful, witty, and had a very dry sense of humor. I have spent the last week trying to plan what to say, maybe to share stories about Yoli or the best way to say goodbye, but I'm battling a bit. My sister is gone, and it feels like very off-brand for Yoli. She had so much life in her. She had so much to do still, including a safari, a Beyonce-themed birthday, which she was asking me to get outfits for 2 months ago already, and exploring the world a bit more. Perhaps the best way to say goodbye is to remember the joy that she brought in particular to her adoring nieces and nephews, to her friends who loved her so dearly and who she held so close to her and who she valued so much, to my mother, to celebrate the stiletto-wearing, wine-drinking, sword-fighting writer, wordsmith, occasional half-marathon runner, and general vibe that Yoli was. To remember that even when she was in hospital, she offered comfort to those of us who were horrified and worried about her. When she was hospitalized for the second time, she said to me, "Don't freak out, but I'm back in hospital again." And then I told her I was freaking out anyway, and she told me I was an agent of chaos. She then also made a joke about the fact that she had been sick for about 3 weeks, but she hadn't lost weight. So, Yoli, I will miss sending you memes at 11 o'clock at night. I'll miss our chats about Amari. I will miss your kindness. I'll miss wearing your clothes with permission this time. And knowing that there was a person that I didn't have to explain certain things to because we lived through them and went through them together. Thank you in particular for the last 9 months. I hope you rest well. I hope you and Tate are happily catching up. We will always remember and celebrate you here. Rest in peace.
Nothing prepares any program director for that, or this loss. The writer gave us words, and so to the writer, words must return. Any writing about Yolisa must henceforth immortalize her infinitely, always buoying their resistance and always leaning into what is possible by affirming the greatness of her story or research participants. In a masculinized world, therapists are not allowed to hug you. Writers and journalists are not often expected to be subjective or be affirming of those being written about or encountered. But because Yoli was Yoli, she affirmed everyone who came across her. And I mean everyone. She didn't even have to be your fan, really. That's just who she was. So whether she was writing a piece about modern Izangoma and their digitized practices, or writing about the preservation of the Cape Malay cuisine, the clarity with which she understood the meaning of her writing in the unestablished archive was always inspiring. When she wrote about Afrofuturist fine art, she was always careful, considerate, and able to separate her general disdain for postmodernist art simply because of the purpose of her work, which was to visibilize the undervisibilized. Of course, as I wrote that sentence, I could feel the side eye of Arundhati Roy, who would probably disagree with me and say there's no such thing. There's simply the preferably unseen. It is not an accident of history, therefore, that the collection of essays she compiled and wrote towards held space for emerging writers like myself, artists, and young voices. The we, in writing what we like, was stable, unadulterated, and free of the vulgarity that over-editorializing does to people's texts. So that's what I mean by an ethical approach to people's writing. Despite this, she aimed for coherence and understood, unbeknownst to her, that any lapses in coherence spoke to the passion and sometimes anger that the youth and other marginalized groups are often accused of. True to form, Yolisa also believed that strategies of liberation needed to be multi-pronged and communal. Ebekwazi ukuphilisana nabantu uYolisa. As such, she served selflessly on a voluntary basis as the administrator at the South African People of Color at the Table, also known as SAPOC. The purpose for which this body was established was to foster connections and share opportunities for people of color in the food, beverage, and creative industries. There are many of her superpowers which leave this organization bereft, some of which include, according to Ishe Govender, how she rolled her eyes at external naysayers. I think everyone, if you've never witnessed Yoli rolling her eyes, I don't think you had really met her. How she summoned her ancestors in moments of crises and supported other fellow members with protection and guidance. You will know that when you're in conflict with someone and personalities are at loggerheads, in your place of work, it is sometimes difficult to defend that person. But Yoli had a different approach. It was always about the principle and the value of whatever brings you together first. And if for a moment she needs to put that aside, she may want to. But of course, I must also be honest that she was also a Scorpio. The social justice element aside, Yoli knew her worth so much so that she found it necessary to give us the best dating blogs you'll ever read. Best. There was so much color in this aspect of her life that the rainbow you might see later this afternoon would be no competitor. Speaking of worth, one of her greatest achievements, which do not have to do with writing or being a great friend, a daughter, an aunt, is that, according to her, the greatest decision she ever made was to stop dating Xhosa men. If Yoli could put that on her LinkedIn account, I'm sure she would. Her disdain, she would say, was well placed, and that no self-respecting black woman would do that to herself. If I had ever been a suitor, I would have advanced the historical facts of Southern African migration and proclaimed, as one should, that I am an African. I think Yoli would respond to this trickery and say, the hills and the valleys, as per our former president, are hills of lies, and the valleys of broken promises. I digress. Yolisa was a great friend. I think that is why we're here. I think people say that about all their friends, at times even when there isn't even a shred of evidence to back it up. She is probably the only person I knew who could make time for everyone without spreading herself too thin. That was her superpower. It is as if she knew she was running on borrowed time. Shani spoke here earlier as her best friend, but I tell you, this past week, I have been inundated with calls from people here and the hinterlands claiming that they were Yoli's best friend. Of course, I could never, ever say, no, point of correction. But that is because there was no hierarchy in how she treated people. Everyone was treated the same. In fact, to depart a little bit from what I've written, Yoli and ethical gossip were bedfellows. When I say ethical gossip, I mean gossip that has no intention of harming others. She never, ever would gossip about her friends. And it is only when she thought the injustice was too great that she would make any reference to that conflict. And even then, it would be a little bit on the euphemistic side because she had a little bit of hope to people or with people. So believe me, it's not ubumenemene on her part. As the youngsters say, she put everyone on as a friend. If you went weeks without speaking to her, she would text you with some opportunity or the other. Friend, here's an opportunity. Go and earn your money in dollars or euros or whatever. I hope SARS is not watching. And I think I speak for everyone when I say we will miss her saying, beloved, you deserve. You deserve. One must not think Yoli was not pro-justice in her friendships. If you found yourself in a self-compromising situation, she would get away with telling you straight that she doesn't support people who make poor life decisions. That is who she was, straight into the narrow. Of course, you may abandon her for 3 months simply because she told you what is and was not going to coddle you anymore. I always thought that was harsh. I think her laying here today is life's poorest decision. Of her misanthropic musings, she would say, no, Choma, people don't change. I would always tell her that people may struggle to change because they do not yet know what to do with their inhibitions, and their environments are not changing fast enough for them to change. I think this is why people wait until loss and death to say, let's value one another. Let's love one another. Because we all hold some level of bitterness about the human condition. We all hold some level of bitterness about how we may have been treated or mistreated. She thought that was always overly generous of me, yet she secretly forgave many, never made mention of how one or other person used her. So although she was consistently principled, she made all concessions for love, as we all do. When attending an event with Yolisa, whether it was as serious as sitting amongst other authors, or whether it was as light as clinking glasses of champagne at restaurant openings hosted by the Morena, she would ask you, will you be coming as Beyonce? And the symbolism of Beyonce there is gender neutral, I must say. Her inclinations towards the finer things of life and beautiful things was unparalleled. Her imagination was sometimes worryingly unrestrained, like keeping a red dyed afro or her donning a blonde wig. Fierce, and fearless she was. Isibindi besingundoqo kumayoli. Ndingade ndithi izibindi zakhe bezingamawele ezithi couplets singekaziboni. Life is a long negotiation centered on the question of love. Ella in Beloved by Toni Morrison, whom Yoli loved so dearly, said, if anybody wants to ask me, I'd say, don't love nothing. And in an interview in 1990, Toni Morrison said, you know, people often say, I didn't ask to be born. I think we did. And that's why we're here. We are here, and we have to do something nurturing that we respect before we go. We must. It is more interesting, more complicated, more intellectually demanding, and more morally demanding to love somebody, to care for somebody, to make one other person feel good. Not doing that is so poor for the soul. It's so poor for the self, excuse me. It is so poor for the mind. It's so uninteresting to live without that. And there's no risk. That does not seem to make life just more livable, but a gallant, gallant life. Yoli lived life, and she was oh so gallant. Life is one long negotiation of how well we do. And how well we do depends on our risk appetite for love. If we are risk averse, we get to live too long because life is waiting for us to be kind, to love without ceasing. When Yolisa was hospitalized the first time, she sent me a text which read, "Friend, don't freak out. I'm in Victoria Hospital waiting to be transferred to Grooteskies. My body is betraying me." Jokingly, and I know I'm oversharing at this point, I said, "I hope this doesn't mean quitting wine." To which she responded, and I'm sorry for the dark humor in advance, "I would rather die, honestly." I went to visit her at the academic hospital, and she was sitting in a chair, not her bed. She had grown tired of being in bed for long hours. There was something different in her, though. She was so still in spirit. Yoli was never still in spirit. I'm sure as a young child, and I wasn't there, teachers would have said, "Do you have ants in your pants?" I think she started grieving for us before we did for her. This is why she always gave great reviews about how she's doing. I believe that she was maintaining our hope. I believe this is why she went into a deep, private place within herself, in unison and alignment with the universe. Because she was naturally extroverted, everyone wanted to eavesdrop in that conversation with herself and the forces of God, however you imagine that force. But she held the barriers of entry into that conversation so tightly, feeding our hopes so as to leave us without ever disappointing us. I am happy she took that time to herself, to settle the matter within herself. And my friend, lunches at the Constantia Glen will never be the same. I don't know if I'll ever see the color red the same. So much is different. But I know that grief is only evidence, as one writer once said, that we loved and we were loved. And that brings me to the end of this eulogy. At this juncture, because days like this require many hands and many people's consideration, I would like to call up to the stage Mr. Mandla Mlambo to do the vote of thanks.
Molweni bantu bakuthi, mandithathe elithuba ndizibulisele. Ndingumandla igama waKwaMlambo, umgcina utyhopho unokwindla uxhamela. Ndilapha ngokucelwa lusapho lwamabongwe namakwena ukuba ndizokwenza ilizwi lombulelo. Ndithi ke phambi uba ndenze njalo, ndikhumbule mhlana ndicelwa ngentseni ngudade Boyoli uNzinga ukuba ndikhawuleze ndise umama esibhedlele eGrootersdal. Mna ke ndinethemba kuba phambi koko bendisanda yombona uYoli esibhedlele. Sangqubana apho ke no-MC lo noko wabe enika ithemba kakhulu uYoli. Into kunayo ke kwenzeka ke ngolu suku ndiyombona ngalo lokugqibela nomama, ibe kanti lusuku lokugqibela lukaYoli ebomini kuba waye sesishiyile. Sathi sime apho ndaziva ndizibuza umbuzo othi kufa uyintoni na. Ndaphinde ndakhumbula intethe yakwaXhosa ithi isitya esihle asidleli. Mandibulele ke amabongwe namakwena ngokunika elithuba. Ndibulele kaphinda amabongwe namakwena on behalf of everyone that is here for the life of uYoliswa. Sivile, we heard everyone speaking here. Bethetha kamnandi ngobomi bukaYoliswa, beprovide i-reflections zobomi bukaYoliswa, and certainly sonke ke besimazi ngokolhlobo simve ngalo uYoliswa. So ndingaphozisanga maseko bantu bakuthi, mandiqale ngokubulela apha usapho lakwaMangwedi apho uNzinga endele khona. Sibabulele ngenkxaso yabo abathe bayibonakalisa kolu sapho ngokwelithuba linzima sikulo. Ndibulele zonke izihlobo nezalamane zosapho lakwaQunta ekuthe sawufumana lenhlungu babonisa ukukhathala. You know, the immense support that the people showed to the family from day one. You know, it's uplifted usapho kwelithuba linzima kangaka. Ndibulele apha ecani kwam ugxa kaYoli ebesikhokhela apha namhlanje uSipho Kuhle wakwaMathe. Nanjengoba ndishilo uba sasidibene esibhedlele saphinda sayodibana ekhayeni likaYoli ngola suku loqala lunzima kakhulu. uSipho Kuhle has since been with the family from that day as uba simbona namhlanje egqiba usipha amazwi omeleza kangaka. Mhlekazi wami ndithi uze ungadinwa, uze wenze ngolhlobo nakumanye amakhaya, kwaye ndikucela into yokuba kungathi ngoku kolusapho kuba uyoliswa engesekho ube uyagqibelisana naye. Uhlale uqhubekeka usenza ngolhlobo. Siyabulela. Ndibulele wonke umuntu othe wama kule platform, izithethi ebezindilisekile zathetha ngobomi bukaYoliswa, ingakumbi abazali ababini kaYoliswa ebebelapha, utata uThemba Noluchungu nomama uFatima wakwaDike. Ngokuba ufika kwakhe ke uYoliswa ukuvela phesheya uzifumenele abanye abazali abaninzi kakhulu, including them. Ndibulele ke uSitsila Funerals for i-administrative duties abathe bazenza ukusukela ngolasuku lokuqala njengoba siyibona iservice uhlobo ephucuke ngalo. Sibulele nelikhampani yenze into yokuba sibone lamakhandlela mahle kangaka, ezi flowers zihle kangaka. I-standards esi siphucuke kangaka. Sibulele nale company ithe yaprovida i-streaming nge-short notice ekubeni ba iceliwe lusapho, kodwa ke bakwazi ukuba on board basiprovidele i-service of this magnitude. Siphinde ke sibulele the current and former colleagues zikaYoliswa who were always near the family ngokwelithuba linzima, despite geographically being far away abakwindawo ngendawo. Sibulele ke ne-medical staff yakwizibhedlele ezimbini esesivile ngazo, i-Victoria Hospital ne-Groote Hospital, apho ke uYoli ebekhona ngelithuba lokugula kwakhe, ebesolo ke kodwa ke bonisa ithemba, kodwa ke ubomi asinawo amandla okuba sibulawule. Sibulele ke nalapha eliholo sithe salinikwa lase St Francis ukuba siqhubele khona umsebenzi kaYoliswa lo undilisekileyo ngolhlobo siubona ngalo. And then ekugqibeleni ndicela ke ukuthi sawusuka apha sizawuhamba siyobeka uYoliswa kwikhaya lakhe lokugqibela, simbeka ecaleni kukatatakhe utata uVuyisa Qunta. Sisuke ke apho siyofumana isixhaso esiya phantsi kwempumlo eleRotholi kulo Yoliswa, and then emva koko ke sikhululeke. Maniphinde ndinibulele bantu ngokuthi niyeke izinto ezibalulekileyo ebekumele uba niyazenza namhlanje. You know, some people were supposed to be at work doing important responsibilities, but you chose to come and be with us as the Qunta family here today. We thank you for that and we appreciate your time. Ngalo mazwi ke ma ndibulele. Okay. Bantu bakuthi ke ngokwenxa ye-restrictions ze-COVID, you know, sizawucela ke silandele i-protocols ze-COVID. Nanjengoba bentshilo ukuba kuzawusuka emadlakeni kuyiwe eLorotholi kulo Yoliswa, usapho kaphinda lunesicelo sokuba emadlakeni from here onwards, it's only the family that will head to the cemetery to bury Yoliswa's body. The rest of us, we can move from here straight to Lerotholi, and then afterwards we will later join because because of COVID, we cannot all of us be there at the same time at the cemetery. So we kindly request that. Ngalo mazwi ndiyabulela, enkosi.
ministry. I'm sorry for the confusion. So I think processionally, what will happen now is that the undertaker company or undertaking company will come and fetch the body, and we will thereafter, as the congregation, start leaving row by row.